Hey, RezaieStrong followers. So I put this poll question out a couple weeks ago now, and it's just taken me a while to get to this video, but essentially it was asking, is banning smartphones from schools good for kids in terms of learning and their well-being? And I posted this as a poll question to you guys, and we really got a mix of answers. 50% of people said, yes, we should be banning smartphones from school. 20% said, I don't know, and 30% said no. And the reason I even posted this question was because of this recent study that came out of Norway where they banned smartphones from over 400 plus middle schools across the country. And they sent surveys to the schools to basically see how kids were doing after the bans compared to before the bans in terms of their well-being, their grades, and a myriad of other things. And there were really 5 key findings that are worth talking about or mentioning here. So the first is that once the phones were banned, there was a decrease in mental health issues in girls. Not boys necessarily, but girls. And it was a 60% decline in mental health doctor visits, which is a pretty impressive finding. The second finding was decreased bullying in both boys and girls just by not having their phones there. The third finding was improved grades in girls. The biggest effect was seen when there were complete bans of phones, in other words, no phones allowed at the school, or turning your phone in before school starts to the teacher and then getting that phone back at the end of school. The fourth finding was there was an increased likelihood of attending an academic high school, and this was most effective when the ban was 2 years or greater. Now, in Norway, the way their school systems work is that you go through middle school and then you have to choose either going to a vocational high school or an academic high school, and they had been seeing an increase in students going to vocational schools and a decrease in academic schools. And what they found is that when they got rid of the phones, there started being an increase of going to the academic pathway. The fifth finding was that the biggest effect were people that were from the lowest socioeconomic status. In other words, kids whose families were hurting for money and for paying bills. But that was not the case in families where money was not an issue. Now, this minimal effect on boys is most likely because of what I'm showing you on this slide. When they asked the kids, how many of you spend greater than 2 hours per day on your phone, 70% of girls said that they did, whereas only 54% of boys said that they did. And then how many of you spend greater than 2 hours on social media, 60% of girls said that they did, whereas only 32% of boys said they did. So quite simply, boys are just not on their phones as much as girls, which is why they think the effects were greatest and most pronounced in the girls. Now, listen, I don't have kids, and I'm not oblivious to what's going on in the United States. And I do think that banning smartphones from schools is obviously better for mental health and for grades for kids, but the society in the US in terms of what we accept as normal is totally different than European countries. And I'm sure most of you know this, but you turn on the TV and there's a shooting at some other school. There are lockdowns in schools. And although I don't have kids, I would probably want to be able to have access to them. And so although it's better for their mental health and their grades, I don't know what the right answer is here. And so sincerely, I'm curious about parents in the United States who have kids going to school, how you feel about banning phones from schools. I'd really like to hear your thoughts and leave them in the comments, because I don't think this is an open and shut case. While it's great that they showed this one thing, the way things work in their country is different than the way they work in the US in terms of our societal norms and the different laws that we have. So there you go. Is banning smartphones from schools good for learning and well-being? The short answer is yes, it's good for kids. I don't think the answer is that simple. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and questions. Thank you as always for those of you who've subscribed and for those of you who are following. And until next time.